there. But they're enough for her. Some would say she's mad. She's not quite mad with him. He isn't there at all. She imagines it. Others would say, yes, she's mad. Mad enough indeed. Mad enough to dig him up, put him in a dressing gown, and sit him upright in a chair. His corpse is there. I see them clearly, as if looking in through a window or through a hole in the wall. She sits in her favorite chair under a lamp, and he in the shadow, where the light and dark come together. How does she go on then? How does she manage? I couldn't. No, if I were she, I just, and there. But for the grace of God am I then. For the grace of God, don't leave me again. Stay with me, always in this room. Because we're not like them, are we then? No, we're not like them. We're lucky. We're together. We'll always be together. Forever and ever. Won't we then?
The Holocaust. Just the word brings to mind pictures of death and destruction. But what of the survivors? It is impossible to conceive of what they are forced to endure in order to survive. The Nazi Doctors by Robert J. Litton. I survived the death camp at Auschwitz in Poland. I should be dead. But I was given an opportunity to live, and I took it! I'm a doctor. And prisoner doctors were needed to assist the Nazis. And so, to save myself, I took the oath. I pledged allegiance to the devil himself. I swear to you, Adolf Hitler, as the Führer and Chancellor of the Reich, loyalty and bravery. I pledge to you and to my superiors, appointed by you, obedience unto death. So help me God. But God had nothing to do with what happened to the prisoners of Auschwitz. I arrived there in September of 1941. My wife, my child, my parents, her parents, and my sister were all with me. When we came off the train, there was an SS officer pushing the women to one side and the men to the other. And then, what happened next, I'm not sure exactly, but I was staying with my father-in-law because he was an older man. I was thinking maybe I could help him out. And then I heard someone say, "Doctors, come out of the ranks!" So I went out, and they put me in this little group to the back. I'm certain that if I would not have heard the call for doctors, I would not be here today. I owe my life to being a doctor, and I owe being a doctor to my parents, who had little money to sacrifice everything to give me an education. I never thanked them for this. The feeling of guilt is so overwhelming because my parents saved me from the gas chambers. We stood in our little group for an hour, not talking, just trying to see where our families had been taken. Then someone came out and told us that most of our group had already been gassed. And it came as such a shock. I didn't know what to think or what to do. What is normal at a time like this? If you got a call in the middle of the night and someone told you that your wife and your child were suddenly gone, what would be your reaction? And then someone told me that my father, who was still a young man, had been taken to the work crew. But my wife, my child, my mother, my parents-in-law, and my sister, they were all gone. And you know, I'm ashamed to tell you this, but I still wanted to live. It's difficult to accept, and even more impossible to understand. I had just heard that my entire family had been killed. 5 minutes later, when I heard the call for the doctors to line up, I went to save myself. It took me a while to realize that as a prisoner doctor, I would be required to take part in all of it. All of the atrocities of this death camp. And my first job was to burn great piles, enormous piles of corpses lying in open trenches. I think I was just numb or in shock. But I remember thinking it was going to be a great problem, igniting piles of corpses. But they were dead, you know. Nothing would burn. How does one manage this? They had already been through the gas chambers, and now thousands of them were lying there and had to be burned. And it was my job to do it. It was my job. And then, of course, there was the unbelievable smell. But after months of burning corpses for 16 hours a day, I didn't smell anything. I had absolutely no emotion left at all. I was proud because I remained human. I believed that I remained doctor in spirit in spite of everything, until I was given a new assignment. I was sent to assist the Nazi doctors with the most medical of all their killing methods, the phenol injections. Prisoners were brought into a treatment room and were administered a drug by a physician in a white coat. We had syringes, phenol, and cotton, everything you needed for an injection. There was also tourniquets and rubbing alcohol. As with ordinary injections, there was just one table. Prisoners were led in and told to place their right hand on the table, to hold the arm steady, as with a regular intravenous injection. And then the tourniquet would be placed on the arm, and the alcohol rubbed on the spot just below the elbow. And using the correct technique, the phenol would be injected. The patients died within minutes. Shortly after, the technique was changed again by the Nazi doctors. The phenol was injected directly into the heart. It was more efficient, you see. Patients died much faster this way, almost instantaneously. My job was to bring the prisoners in two at a time and seat them like this. Then I'd have them raise their right arm up to cover their eyes, and the left arm sideways in a horizontal position. The idea was to thrust the chest out as far as possible so the heart was easily accessible. I watched as the needles on the phenol syringes were thrust into the hearts of the seated prisoners, and the prisoners would fall over immediately. Now, I would like to tell you about September 28, 1942, because I have never been able to tell anyone about it before. I was removing bodies after a phenol injection, and when I came back into the room, my father was standing in the doorway. He had always been such a fine, strong man, but he looked like a walking skeleton, just like all the others. And then he looked at me with a reproachful, beseeching expression, sort of saying, "It cannot be possible that you stand there and I stand here." And when I didn't move or say anything, he looked at me with such disappointment. But there was nothing I could do. There was nothing I could do. I was more afraid for myself than for him. And I cried as I carried his dead body through the trenches. There are people in this world who have hated each other for centuries. But these people, these Nazis who killed others so systematically, just because they belonged to a different race, that was a different world. I belonged to that world. I survived Auschwitz, but not as a hero. I was the worst kind of coward. You see, in the dark times I've experienced since my release, My eyes have been opened. I begin to see. This story is not yet ended. It has not yet become history. This world still harbors hatred and intolerance, and these evils have a life of their own that could break out of hiding tomorrow in you or me.
This rest, newly crowned king and priest, is facing his first challenge as king, discovering who killed the former king Laios. He created the Creon Commission to determine the facts. Eddie, by Rich Orloff. Creon, my trusted aide, Tyreus, noble seer, at last you have returned. I demand to know what you have learned.
Well, first we visited the oracles of Delphi to see what they could tell us.
We learned that King Laios was murdered by his own son.
But that's impossible. King Laios had no son.
Actually, he did, several years ago. The child was banished as an infant, and everyone assumed that he died in the wilderness.
Oh, poor child. I feel his pain as if it were my own.
Funny you should say that.
We learned that the child was taken in by a shepherd and grew up to be about your height, your weight, and according to some descriptions, looked a lot like you.
What a coincidence.
Eddie, how to put this? As you know, we didn't do a whole lot of background checks. Did you say kill anyone on your journey here?
Let me recall my journey. I decided it was time for me to leave Corinth to seek my future in the world, so I decided to journey to Thebes. When I got to the town of Phocis, I met up with a band of travelers. One of them said something obnoxious to me, so I clubbed them all to death. Other than that, I haven't killed anyone.
Eddie, King Laios was clubbed to death in the town of Phocis.
But, Creon, you said that King Laios would be murdered by his own son. I've never even met the man before. This is going to be a bad news day, huh?
Eddie, you're adopted.
Oh, this is a lot to deal with. We also learned that the son of Laios had a birthmark in the shape of an olive on the bottom of his left foot.
Okay. As you can see, I have no such mark.
It looks like an olive to me.
Tyreus?
I see nothing.
I'll go with Tyreus!
Eddie, get real. That's an olive.
Okay. Technically speaking, that's an olive. I must be the son of Laios, and I murdered my father in rage. I've done a very bad thing. Now, can we just drop it already?
Actually, I'm afraid we can't, due to your public statements on the matter.
Oh, what can I do?
Wait, one thing isn't clear.
Here comes the messy part.
If I'm Laios' son, and Laios was married to Jocasta, who is now my wife, that means King Laios must have had a previous wife, right?
I'm afraid not.
Did he ever fool around on the side?
Never.
Oh my God! I've murdered my father and married my mother!
It could be worse. You could have murdered your mother and married your father. Then you'd be in real trouble.
Oh, how can I expunge such evil deeds from my soul?
There is only one way.
I must pluck out my eyes!
Do it and you'll have a moment's satisfaction and a lifetime of wondering if your toga's on straight.
Okay, fine. Does my beloved wife know about this?
Not yet.
You, oh Eddie! In here, Jocasta. Eddie, I was just wondering,
Oh, am I interrupting something?
Yes. No, we were just leaving, right, Terraces?
Yes, I was just going to practice my musical instrument.
Liar.
No, honestly. Jocasta,